Hi, this is Scott. I really appreciate our sponsors because they make the show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Telerik. Create compelling app experiences across any screen with the Telerik platform. Telerik's end-to-end platform uniquely combines industry-leading UI tools with cloud services to simplify the entire app development cycle. Telerik offers everything .NET developers need to build quality apps faster. Try it free at telerik.com/platform. That's telerik.com/platform.
From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 461. In this episode, Scott talks with Ruby language creator Matsumoto Yukihiro.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I am here in Japan today at the GoAzure event. And I have the pleasure of talking right now live in front of an audience here with Matsumoto Yukihiro, also known as Matz. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you so much for chatting with us. We have applause now. This is great. I don't usually have applause.
No.
So you are the creator of the Ruby language.
Yes.
And you did this in 1995?
I started developing Ruby in 93. And then I put it in the open source on 95. Mm-hmm. It's kind of as old as Java.
Yeah, that is quite old.
Yeah.
What is happening in your mind when you're thinking, I need to make a language.
Yeah.
I need to make a better language. What were you doing in 93 that made you make a new language?
Actually, I had been a big fan of programming language for a long time since I was in high school. So I studied a lot about programming languages. Actually, I was interested in languages rather than making software. So whatever the purpose is, I wanted to learn about the programming language. Mm-hmm. So after I graduated from school, university, then I became a professional programmer. And then in 93 in Japan, the bubble economy was crashed. So the economy was decreased. And then my project was canceled. And luckily, I wasn't fired. So I have no assigned job. I have time. I was boring. And I had a computer on my desktop. So I wanted to start something. Then my high school dream came back. So, okay, let's create a language for my own.
So when I talk to people who have made languages before, I'm a software person who makes applications, so I always assume they're making the language for an application. But when I talk to language people, they're making the language for the language's sake, for the joy.
Yes.
Yes, for the happiness of making the language.
Yeah, I am that kind of person.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't thinking this will be a popular web language or a scripting language. You were just thinking this will be a great language.
Yeah, I learned a lot about the programming language. So I loved some feature of that language or the other feature from the other language. So I picked up these lovely things, put it into one in unified design. So that's what I wanted to. So I didn't mean to create, say, web programming language, so that just a programming language with full of my favorite features.
So, what languages were your favorite languages that you pulled inspiration from?
Back then, I liked Lisp, Smalltalk, and C, and a little bit of Perl.
Mm-hmm. Perl, really?
Yeah, actually.
It seems like you just described some very elegant languages, and then Perl.
Yeah, Perl is kind of pretty much elegance in a pragmatic way.
That's true. That's true. So that's an interesting point, because there's a lot of discussion around languages around, is this the purest language? Is this a language for the lambda calculus? Or is this the pragmatic, let's get some work done language?
Yeah. I want to something in between in very good balance.
Yeah. And balance is something that people say they feel when they are using Ruby. One of the things that I have heard is that people like to write Ruby like a haiku.
Uh-huh.
Have you heard this? They want the Ruby to flow and to feel right. It's a sense of aesthetic, of art. I don't hear this with other languages. You don't think about beautiful Java, but you do hear beautiful Ruby. Was that your intent?
Yes. I had been pretty much focused on the designing for human sake, for designers, or the Ruby users, developers. So I wanted, as a primary user of my own programming language, so I wanted to amuse myself by designing the best programming language suitable for me, myself. Unexpectedly, many people all over the world felt similar way. So I like this programming language. This programming language is pretty much pretty beautiful in his own side. So I was surprised. I designed programming language for myself, and then so many people feel similar way.
That's interesting because I hear that about artists of other kinds. Are you painting for the public or are you painting for yourself? If I make some art and I love the art, I don't care what you think. But if everyone loves it, then you've touched something more human, more deeper. It's interesting also, though, that you did this quietly for a few years alone, yes? You didn't have anyone helping or committee?
So I told some of my close friends, but none other programmers.
Right. So Ruby is not something that has been designed by committee.
No, at all.
Right. So it's a reflection of your style. And then did it immediately become popular when you put it out? You push a button and go to sleep, and then you wake up famous?
Yeah, it took long time to become popular. So I previously mentioned I started developing Ruby in 93, and then I put it on the internet on 95. But I don't know, 5 to 6 years. So very few people knew about the programming language. And then on the year 2000, the pragmatic Dave Thomas wrote a book named Programming Ruby, and which is a kind of reference and tutorial combined into one book. Then that book introduced the Ruby language to the non-Japanese people. So many people first met Ruby through that book.
Really?
Yeah, on year 2000. Then year 2001, we organized the first Ruby conference in Tampa, Florida. Then every year we had a Ruby conference. The first Ruby conference was the number of attendee was 37 or something. Very small conference.
Like a user group.
Yeah, like a user group or meetup. Yeah, international meetup though.
Really?
Yeah, and it was held a week before the ACM Uppsala. So the people, some of the Uppsala attendee also attend the Ruby conference. So we had an attendee from the United States, of course, in Japan, Mexico, Germany, France, from many countries. But the number of it only 30 something.
And had you been a member of like ACM and a kind of a computer scientist as you?
Yeah, I was a member of the ACM, but I'm not an academia person, but I just became a member to read some papers from the ACM library.
How many languages do you think get created and have small 30-person meetups and that's just the end of that language.
Yeah, pretty much possible. And I expect that kind of maybe 100 to 100 people use Ruby for several years and get bored and move into the other language like a Python and anything like that. And then the language will be gradually disappears from the internet. That was what I expected at the beginning, but that didn't happen.
Yeah. And do you get tired of Ruby though?
Actually,
many
no.
years later, it still makes you happy.
Yeah. It was designed to make me happy, and it worked well.
Mm-hmm. So today, this is still your favorite language. Your language is your favorite language. Do you think about the next versions and what's happening in other languages right now? Because there's a lot of other, Go is coming up, and people are talking about other languages. There's a lot of excitement around Scala. Lisp is maybe seeing a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah. In recent years, the statically programming language like a Scala or say Go or some other language, and the functional programming language, the Haskell and the OCaml is getting more popular. And I understand the pros from those languages, but still, so I still love the dynamicity and the flexibility and the productivity of dynamic typed programming language like Ruby. So we are currently working on something in between, like a through the technology like soft typing or gradual typing, so that you can write the code without any type declaration, but the compiler is smart enough to guess your intention of types. Then the compiler can tell you your intention, and you can you can have a conversation about types with the compiler.
That's a really good way to put that. I really like that. Some people, like in my world, is very much C#. The compiler is a policeman, and the compiler is a spell checker.
Yeah.
And the compiler says, "You're wrong.
Yeah.
Stop doing that."
Yeah.
But you just described a wonderful conversation with the compiler. Well, I think you mean this. What do you think? Well, compiler, maybe this way. By giving different annotations, you can bend the compiler to your will.
Yeah. One of my plan is that kind of, the Google has the feature named the "Did you mean" and something. So if you made a typo or if you choose the wrong words, so the Google suggests us the right keywords to search. So I'd like to implement something similar in Ruby error messages. So if I made a typo or some kind of mistakes, the compiler suggests me, did you mean this?
That's so helpful.
Yeah, to help us fix the problem.
That's a very humanist approach to programming languages.
Yeah. So I want the computer to our servant. So I want to be a master of my computers. So that I don't want to get arrested by making mistake.
Right. The computer works for me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want my computer to be like Jarvis and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Like so kind and so helpful to me. Yeah, that's fantastic. I really like that idea of a conversation with your compiler. I like that you said that. So then, when did Rails happen, and did he just do Rails and then you said, "Hey, what's going on over there?" Or did DHH approach you? How did that happen?
Rails was started 10 years ago, 2004, and then the Rails became popular soon after that, and then so many people found Ruby through Rails. So Rails is so popular, and the building up the website using Rails, that means programming in Ruby. So that people found and learned Ruby through Rails, and then that became a basis of the Ruby's popularity right now.
Hey, this is Scott. I like a good community edition. The best things in life are free, and the community license from our sponsor, Sync Fusion, will give individual and small business developers access to more than 650 components across 12 platforms, and that includes WPF and Windows Forms, JavaScript, Xamarin, LightSwitch. You can check it all out at syncfusion.com/Hanselman to claim your free license. Did that new use case change your perspective, or were you already thinking web when you started?
We are thinking web before that. So Rails is not the first web application framework for Ruby. So we had several of them years before. But Rails is most productive, and Rails became most popular.
And how do their needs and use cases influence you?
Probably Rails puts the productivity and the flexibility in the first priority for the developers. That was very different from others back then. So we had say web application framework for Java, but we had to write tons of XML code to implement flexibility. So back then, the XML is the scripting language for Java.
Yes,
but
I remember.
It's not easy to read. It's not easy to write.
And it seems also that a number of people have used Ruby to make their own domain-specific languages. It was so flexible that they made their own.
Yeah.
Do you interact with those? Are there any particular domain-specific languages in Ruby?
I think Rails itself is a web domain-specific language, web DSL.
Yes.
And Sinatra extended a step further. So I encourage people to use Ruby as a basis of DSL. Just because, by using a DSL approach, the programmers or even non-programmers can be more productive and more flexible, and the application will be programmable. That is a good thing.
It is a very good thing. It makes people happy. When someone is creating a language specification, sometimes they will discover gaps in that specification where someone will use the language in a way that the compiler didn't expect. While Ruby was coming up and gaining a lot of use, did anyone find interesting uses where they wrote something in Ruby that you didn't think about, that it confused the compiler in an interesting way and changed the language?
I
know that's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a good question though. And the Rails comes with a library named Active Support, which is enhanced the language. So by that library adds tons of methods to the existing classes. And so you can say, for example, 2.days.ago to get the time of the 48 hours prior or something like that. And that is quite interesting approach. The many people don't expect to extend the existing class, but I allow that. But on purpose. But the Rails people extend that few steps farther than I expected.
Yeah, and I know when I saw active support for the first time and typed 2.days.ago, it felt strange because it was so fluent from an English speaker's perspective that it almost seemed like magic.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you had thought about that fluency, that idea of the fluent interface before. And I feel like maybe active support and Ruby's flexibility inspired a new generation to create these fluent interfaces. Yeah.
And we have the test library named RSpec, which is quite similar to English sentence. And, as a non-English speaker, so it makes me feel somewhat weird or too much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel honored to be a author of that kind of the programming language, abusable.
Changing topics a little bit, one of the things that I admire about you is this funny concept of minswan.
Minswan?
Yeah, minswan. Matz is nice, so we are nice.
Yeah.
Did you consciously try to foster a positive community of helpers? Or are you just nice and it just happened?
The term minswan itself is not coming from me, of course.
Of course
it's
not.
From
Of course not.
It's from it's for Marty Fowler.
Mm-hmm.
He said minswan for the first time, and I'm sick of the handling trolls in the community. So in the very early stage of the Ruby community, we are on the mailing list. So sometimes the very ignorant people or arrogant people came and complains and then trolling, but some it's quite difficult for me, English speaker, to handle this situation. But some other guys became to what you say, nourish or pacify him. Okay, this is not the place to complain. This is the place for us to discuss or to make the constructive discussion.
Right.
So he helped us to be nice to each other.
Right. They set the tone of the room.
Yeah. The atmosphere of the community.
The atmosphere.
So I really, really like them. And so as a member of a community, I try to be nice to many people. But the original atmosphere was actually driven by these guys in the early community. And I followed them.
Oh,
actually.
So really, it's the early community members decided, let's change the tone. Let's not be trolls. Let's not be arrogant. Let's be supportive.
Yeah. So unlike the term minswan, so the early member of the community, the whole member of the community, designed the atmosphere and the tone of the community.
Yeah, that's great. And that's something that everyone should feel proud of, because I think that if people say one thing about Ruby, they would say that the community is welcoming.
Yeah.
And we hear this a lot when newbies are starting out. They find Ruby and the community to be very, very kind and very helpful.
Yeah,
absolutely. So you're working on, do you work on Ruby on a regular basis, or do you think it will ever be done? Will you ever put it aside and say, I think I'm done for a year, and I'm going to do other things, and then come back? Or do you think you'll always be improving?
I no longer work as a programmer for the C Ruby. So I have the full-time core committer hired by Heroku, and then two other guys are working pretty well. So as a programmer, I don't have to work on C Ruby no longer. But as a designer, I still working on full time. So the many design choices are waiting for my decision. So I make decisions to follow, decide the direction to the language follows. And at the same time, I'm a kind of the time sliced. So I sometimes work on the alternative Ruby implementation named mRuby. So I'm working on that. And recently I'm working on some other programming language named Stream.
Is this a hobby, or is this
just a hobby?
It's not the next big thing.
No,
for you?
not the next thing. Just a hobby and a prototype.
And when you're designing these things, is it primarily just you thinking about a feature that would make you happy, or do you feel now the pressure of all the other users of Ruby? Because before it was you in a room alone making yourself happy with your toy, but now you have this community, this rich community around you.
Yeah, since we have actually literally millions of users all over the world, so we have to be very, very careful about not to break anything. So the compatibility is our first priority.
It is.
As a language. So recently we have many proposals and issues of the ideas to change the language better. So we examine those ideas. So if we keep the compatibility, if we make this change make the language better or not, or if this change is alongside follow the philosophy behind the Ruby language or something. So after this investigation and a very serious consideration, we pick some of them, and then we reject many of them.
Has there been any thought, or what do you think about Ruby as a possible replacement for JavaScript? Because we hear people who both love JavaScript and hate it, and they feel like it's the worst language ever, but it's the only one we have because there's such browser support. Why didn't Ruby become the scripting language for the browser?
That decision is up to the browser creators. So the Mozilla company or the Google and the Microsoft, all these big players have to make that kind of big decision. And under the current situation, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, it's never going to happen. This is the language we have.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to make these 3 or 4 big players to make that kind of the big change or the big compromise.
What other languages are you excited about right now? Do you see a new language and you play with it and try it out and see how it feels?
Recently, I studied about Go from Google and Swift from Apple. And these 2 languages are pretty interesting in the different aspect, from different aspect. And at the same time, I'm interested in language like, Clojure and Scala, the language influence from the functional programming language.
I read an article yesterday that said that Swift is one of the fastest growing languages.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is that is it the language and its design and its style that is driving that? Or is it the promise of the App Store and making big money?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see what drives the growth of a language. Like, first it was Ruby and that it made people happy, and then it was Rails and it made people productive, and then now we have app stores where it can make people money. But it still seems like you really enjoy just the making of the language and using the language.
Yeah. And, the primary motivation different from people to people, developers. But at the same time, I believe the motivation needs to be driven by joy or internal satisfaction. So the programming joy is one of the very basic ingredient of the programmer's motivation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, and I've said this to my folks at Microsoft, that we use the word delight sometimes too much, but does this really make them happy? Whether it be this button or this keyword or this feature, I want people to have that joy of a child just going, I made this. I saw someone on this Code Newbies. This is a chat. Code Newbies? Code Newbies was talking about that feeling that you get when you get your first Rails app. Hello world. He goes, I did it.
Yeah, that's a great joy. And actually, I still the same way in my daily programming. So I did it.
Isn't that funny? That makes me happy sometimes.
Yeah, that makes me happy. Very, very, very happy.
Yeah, I work from home, so I don't have an office. But just a few weeks ago, I accomplished something I didn't think I could. And I stood up in my chair, and I looked around, and there was nobody there to cheer me. But I tried to tell my wife, and she didn't care.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. But it's okay.
Me too.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.